What if we could redesign everything? Welcome to the DIF, the world's largest online festival of ideas. My name is Seb, and I'll be your host for the next 30 minutes or so. And we're talking today about ecosystems thinking. We're talking about the connections between things, and to help us navigate that, I'm joined by Jose, co-founder of 7 Vortex. And if you're wondering, what is 7 Vortex? Well, we're going to get to that very shortly. But first, just a reminder that really what we want most of all from the next 30 minutes from this DIF session is your inputs, your questions, your comments, your feedback. We want to challenge Jose if possible. Any burning questions you've had about this topic, or if there's a reason why you were intrigued enough to turn it on and come and watch us, put that right in the comments features on the right-hand side of the DIF website, on the YouTube stream if you've already navigated to YouTube. And you can also tweet us using hashtag ThinkDiff. And we'll be putting all of those comments and questions in and asking those to Jose during this session. My colleague Kinga will be diligently responding to you in those places. So so definitely send those questions in, definitely send those comments in. They are what makes the DIF special and exciting. So that's what we want. But first, Jose, thank you so much for joining us today from Munich. So what is 7 Vortex?
All right, thank you, Seb. Yes, well, thank you for the invitation and the introduction, and to anybody that is tuning in as well. Well, 7 Vortex, it's very fluid, and our community keeps using it in different ways. We do define it as an ecosystems mapping platform, which was conceived by my partner, Hugo Araujo, while he was having quite an immersive experience in nature in Mexico at the coast. So while he was living there, we're both systems engineers, by the way. We're both originally from Mexico. So we both have this natural way of thinking in systems and feeling that things are connected. We both left the corporate world. He did it a bit before me. And he started working on impact management, working with NGOs and corporations. And while he was doing that work, he realized that we needed a more systemic approach to tackle certain issues. And when he was living in nature, he realized that there was really no way of connecting the knowledge from natural ecosystems. And at the same time, he was getting his B-Pro certification at the Biomimicry Institute. So this combination of him living there with his background in impact management and corporation and innovation, and living in nature, gave way to him starting to conceptualize how could we develop a software platform that helps us gather and connect knowledge. So it started with the idea of mapping natural ecosystems. But since we launched this version that it's already online earlier this year, in January, roughly, people are mapping all sorts of man-made ecosystems. That is business ecosystems, economic ecosystems, anything you can think of. So that's what it is. The idea for today, it's a very visual tool. And I think if I only talk, people will never be able to imagine what it actually is. So the idea would be to jump into 7 Vortex, show you some examples, and then do some mapping together, mapping the themes of the DIF.
That sounds like a great plan. Just maybe just to ground us all a little bit at the same starting point. What ecosystem? What does that look like? I mean, you talked about mapping natural ecosystems. Is that anything? Is that a frog eats a insect, gets eaten by something else? What actually defines an ecosystem?
Yeah. So given my background, I will land the concept in talking about organizations and economic and business ecosystems, and going in that direction. So I go away from the actual natural ecosystems. We see it as having an understanding that things are interdependent, that they are connected with one another, and that in order to reimagine and deliver really capture new value, we need to think in terms of collaboration and look for things that not single organizations can reach by themselves. So it's really this idea that everything is interconnected and everything is about designing solutions, moving even a bit further from human-centered design and going into relation-centered design.
So what you're saying is that many of our businesses and indeed our economies today have been created or are based on principles that sort of work in isolation. Like if you're a tire company, you make and do tires, and your own business exists in itself. But actually, of course, there's a huge number of other actors who influence what happens with that business, from the supply chain through to the customers, through to all sorts of other uses, and it's way more complex than we currently appreciate in the way in which we create business and economies. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, we basically think that the times of thinking in linear modes and in silos, that it's over, that we really need to go beyond that. And we have this image of seeing everything embedded. So people are part of an organization is part of a value network, which is their supply chains, their partners. And these value networks are embedded in our social systems. And these social systems in itself are embedded in natural ecosystems. And of course, everything, the way it works today, it's not really following this logic, which is pretty straightforward. And I think it's common sense, but nothing today is designed that way. Everything is externalities. It's not really part of the day-to-day of how things are designed, especially in the business world.
And maybe just a couple of very quick questions, again, just the sort of 101 stuff. Just about your background, you described yourself as a systems engineer. What does that mean? What is that a degree that people
actually it is. So in this particular case, I can say that it's a degree. So I studied at the Tec de Monterrey in Mexico City, and it's a double degree, which is industrial and systems engineers. And it's not IT. So a lot of people, when they hear the word systems, they think in IT. It's not. It's really system dynamics, organizational systems, and so on. And it is a proper bachelor's degree.
So your background is grounded in thinking about the interconnectedness of everything. And then the final, maybe 101 question has actually come from Eliza on thinkdiff.co. And she asks, what's the difference between, maybe also ask, is there a difference between systems thinking and ecosystems thinking?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question. And it's a question that we still deal with, and we still try to make sense of it ourselves. And being systems engineers, we do recognize that what we have, if we call it a systems mapping tool, we don't have all the elements that you would expect to have if you take a very formal systems approach with the feedback loops and so on. So we don't have that. So it's more open and fluid than that. And also is the thing with the relationships. So we don't have all the elements in ecosystems thinking. I would say the way we see it, it's probably a bit more open and less formal than the systems thinking approach, but they are very close together with one another.
So as you said, this is obviously quite conceptual, which is interesting. But I think what's really exciting about hopefully this session and some of the work you're doing is that it's very visual as well. So maybe can you show us what this actually looks like?
Yeah, sure. So let me show my screen. So can you see it?
So yeah, so what we're looking at now is an actual ecosystems map. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so this is this is pretty much a canvas. I mean, I will go later to the library, and basically everything is online. So it's a web-based platform that is already there. It's 7vortex.com.
That's open, is it? It's just open and free to access.
It's open. You just need to log in with email and password, and you can start mapping right away and make everything public. So there is a library where you can. So I will show you that one very quick so that people kind of get a sense of it. So this is where you land. If you go to 7vortex.com, you come here, which is the open library. everything you see here, it's been done by a community of about, we have more than 500 creators right now in around about 80 countries in the world. So it's pretty global already. And this is, we don't control what is here. So people, I mean, I will show you some examples that you see here. So I already know this one, so I will go there. So this is already one map, and I will go through it later, but this is where you land. This is how pretty mature ecosystems looks like. I mean, a creation, of course, and you get to this from the open library that you have here.
It looks, for some of our audience who may be familiar with Kumu, is it similar to Kumu?
Yeah, yeah, they are pretty amazing. Kumu. So it's very similar. Yeah. Right. So you can start like that. So I blended everything, right? So I'm in this mode where I'm presenting it. So we are 3 co-founders. I won't go through that. That is more or less the bit that I already told you about the team, the community, and the why now in terms of ecosystems. What I do think is important, and it's a key element of the platform, is why it's nature inspired. And the key element here is that the relationships are defined by biological patterns. So the relationships between the nodes are defined here. So you can define all the relationships based on this, which is plus, it's collaboration, plus null commensalism, neutralism, amensalism, predation, and competition. So by defining the relationships, you can, in the long term, evaluate also what's the health of your ecosystem. And again, when I mention the word ecosystem, it's the broader term ecosystem. It's not only natural ecosystem. But this is one of the, let's say, unique creations that Hugo came up with. So, and what's interesting about this case, if I go a little bit into the relationships, some people have asked us if we can customize the relationships. Of course, it's possible. It cannot be done yet, but it's very doable. And interestingly enough, people from actually big companies have told us, okay, it's nice if I can define the relationship with a different name, but it's very important that we keep these relationships in the background so that we slowly start developing a common language amongst different organizations and different people. We thought it was a pretty, so no matter what we do, if we end up customizing the type of relationships, we will always keep this in the background to make sure that we develop a common view of which is based on biological patterns. So that is, and there are many things to it, and I hope that along the way, as I'll show you some examples, you will get this feeling of it has a very natural and biological touch to it. But let's say that's the most important one, the relationships.
So just to clarify, the big part of the nature-inspired element is the fact that we're categorizing relationships in a way that they might work in the way that the relationships within nature work.
Yeah.
Great.
And you define it. I will show you very quick. Basically, you do it here. You go to the relationship. Of course, it's a presentation effect not working. Yeah, and you define it here. So you say some vortex and nature inspired or both. Say it's very, very straightforward. So the other important thing to consider is that everything you see, no matter how complex the ecosystem is human driven. So we are not doing the technology where we built it with graph databases. So it comes from that world of importing big sets of data. Everything you see in 7 Vortex today is created from scratch by people, right? Because a lot of people see it and they think, oh, it's this imports of data. It's not. Everything is human driven. So we see 7 Vortex as the ultimate goal is to, well, one of the ultimate goals as means to achieve something bigger is to capitalize on our knowledge, right? And then it's multi-purpose, and I will show some examples. So these are the ones that I'm familiar with. Actually, there are more. So I'm not saying these are all the things you can do with 7 Vortex. I will get rather quick to the you decide, which is, I think, very nice. Something that is, I think, becoming very clear that Zen Vortex makes quite a big difference is that we have all these. Stop sharing. I mean, I see this vision of a lot of knowledge popping up in different places, and everything is changing. We have organizations, everything feels like a network now, and we see big companies, small companies, communities, with social media, with academies, with corporate venturing, and then we have all these meetups. So many opportunities where people gather and are activations. And I think design thinking has made wonders to help us think differently and do things different. And we also feel that a lot of times this knowledge is lost. If you think of, I don't know, think of workshops or even this event, right? What's going to happen? I don't know what happens with a webinar, with what I'm saying. But where it's a digital or a face-to-face encounter, a lot of times this knowledge is lost. And what we're trying to do with Zen Vortex is to find a natural way of capturing and connecting this knowledge and be able to distribute it afterwards. We're not quite there yet because we still cannot do collective mappings, but that's the vision where we want to get.
Right? A collective mapping.
So that, for instance, right now I could create a map and everybody could start putting in data on their insights.
It's interesting. There's a question in from Michelle. Where she, her question is simply, who is actually using this already? And I guess you were just sort of getting into some of the examples of how it's being used, but what types of, I think our question is more about what types of people are using it. Is it startups? Is it researchers, academics? Is it NGOs? Is it individuals who are just playing with things? Is it designers?
All of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah. So however, there are patterns. And the creators themselves are people that have, in a broad sense, a facilitator role. So it has started a lot with academics, researchers, consultants, designers. So people that have this role of doing research, starting off ideation processes, having to map something when they start a project. So people that have a lot of concept work in their day-to-day lives. And then having to convey these messages to others. So we do recognize there are these facilitators in a very broad sense of the word that are, I would say, the initiators and activators of Zen Vortex. But it's quite broad.
What are the kinds of insights that get? I mean, I think like intuitively, I understand the idea that actually there's a huge amount of, and we talk a lot, it's a big theme of the diff, systems thinking. Everything is connected. We can't create this sort of silos that we've been working in businesses, within the economy, in the wider world. But what kinds of insights are coming out of people who are using this tool? What kind of things are they discovering that, or connections they're discovering that allow them to do something different? Is it, what are they getting out of it, I guess? I mean, maybe it's too early to say, but I wonder if you had any examples of the types of things people are learning.
Yeah. So to that, I will go back to the sharing, if that's fine. I'm also conscious of the time. So I will choose first this one example. So for instance, this is an incredible initiative run by the SEGIP, which is a little bit like the World Economic Forum, but for Latin America. They're based in Madrid. And they run this yearly Civic Innovation Lab. And I will show you that. So I put the link there. So here I will try to tell you the story, and then in the end I will get to your question, which is what insights do we get from this. So I was there. It was in Argentina this year. Basically, we have here first the open call. So the nice thing already is that this is gathering data from many different websites, for instance, and you don't have to change media. So we have here the open call. I mean, excuse me, there is quite a bit in Spanish here. I hope that's fine, but at least the notes are all in English. So the concept here is there is an open call for 10 projects, and then 100 people from 20 different countries come to work on those 10 projects. So then how it worked? Well, here I have the code of conduct. So as you can see, the type of media that you can have. So it's you can have also videos, and you can run them directly here. So this is a YouTube video, and you don't need to change sites. And I will show you later how easy it is to embed it. The agenda, so you have links to other websites, and then what you see here is was rather open, but they did have the SDGs as a baseline. So here we have, okay, which SDGs and the projects, how are they connected to the SDGs? So in this case, gender equality, we have 2 projects connected to it. Reducing inequalities, you can see some more in Latin America. Sustainable cities and communities. So that was the only filter, let's say, that they had to be linked to these 5 SDGs.
There's a lot of lines on this map.
Yeah, we can get rid of those, by the way.
Oh, so, no, I'm not.
So you can also do that. And then what we see, this is actually how they were. It was a very big open space where you have the 10 projects and the people working on each of the projects, right? So that's where we have a picture of the team, a description of the project, some tags so that you can find it, and all the different people that were working in. So this is how it happened. And then in this case, and that's why this is another thing that it's linked to the design principles, is the fact that that it evolves with time. So it didn't end up as a still image, but here you can continue looking at how it was. So here, for instance, it's the video of the last day when they presented. Since then, there have been some press releases in different newspapers, so we have links to those. So people just send their link to the newspaper, and then we put it here. So there was also the summit of all the governments, and they all said it's an incredible initiative, and they want to continue pursuing it. So that's here as well, that press release. We have the social media links. So for instance, we have Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. So if we go to the Twitter one, it takes us directly to the hashtag of Lavicar, where you can then get the hashtag of Lavicar on Twitter. And then, so this is the system didn't do it like this. So, well, we have all the organizations that were involved. This is a curation, and of course, it's more the curation of a ready map. It's a bit more art than science, and you have your data and you start accommodating it in different ways. However, you can release it. So if I release it, it goes like that. So I get rid of the curation, and then if I get rid of the curation of the size of the nodes, so I go here by degree, and then this each node, the size of each node is impacted by the number of connections. So this lab was in Argentina, so that becomes apparent that, well, there were more people from Argentina than other countries. I think Brazil was also a big one. So right away you get an idea of which are the nodes with the greatest number of connections because of the size of the nodes.
And when you changed whatever you changed just then, everything went spinning for a minute, and then it settled down. Is that just the program working, or is that, you know, how does it choose its new order?
Based on the connections. So and this, I think this is what I meant before, that it feels very alive. So based on the connections that it has, it tries to adapt based on that. So the system tries to make sense of accommodating the nodes in a way that is relevant to the connections. Of course, sometimes it's affected by the curation itself as well. But yeah, I think this is a very good example that, to me, captures a lot of what 7-Vortex is.
So an example of an insight from that one is Argentina was a hub during this campaign. So, you know,
yes,
the creator of this map could say, how did it go, our competition or whatever it was.
Yeah.
We know that in Argentina there was a lot of activity and a lot of people from Argentina relative to some other countries.
Yeah, that's the most straightforward one. Then you can see that the balance between the SDGs is pretty balanced. So the yellow dots are the SDGs, and you can see that they're pretty balanced amongst themselves. Also the projects, of course, they are, because each project had 10 people working on them. But yeah, those are the closest insights, and there are more analytics that we can do in the back end, which are not in this on this interface. And yeah, I don't think we will have time to go through all of this. I'm going to make this map public so that people can go through some of the examples, right? Like Kate Raworth, this amazing economist, lately, not long ago, she asked her Twitter community to give her books that are changing the world. So people started sending book titles. So we did a map on those, on the titles and the categories. For instance, this is another data repository about planetary health and regeneration. So where you have videos, frameworks, articles, networks and amplifiers, organizations. Market landscaping. So for instance, this is a typical one, very straightforward, and I will show it. This company wanted to do an industrial Internet of Things market landscaping, and the goal was to do, position where the companies were. And typically you see these bidimensional matrices, but it's more complex than that. So almost everything we touch and start is multidimensional. So this is, for instance, a market analysis on the industrial Internet of Things here in Germany. Another important feature is that you can, once you have a map, you can share it in our library, on social media, but you can also embed it on other websites. So it doesn't need to necessarily only live on our website, but you can go to, for instance, this is a project where it's about combining insights from space and from the ground, from a virtual reality journalist. And you can see that this map from North Korea is living on this other website. So you edit it on our platform, and then it's embedded here. But it keeps its dynamism here. We'll work on supply chains. I won't go through that, but if people are working on supply chains and have seen this, and this is pretty amazing as well, to map, where the genealogy of where materials are coming from. So here are the circles of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. So this is the supply chain of a tennis shoe. And as you can see here, there is a model in the background, which takes me to the next slide, which is for business design. So I use this quite a bit. So the famous business model canvas, you can also have it in the background as a template and work on top of it. So you have a very dynamic and friendly way of working with the canvas, rather than making picture of it and sending it somewhere. And last but not least, is that people really surprise us with their creations. And this is, I think, from Peru. And it was a gift from a community to somebody there, where they put pictures from videos and pictures and messages for a friend. So basically, a group of friends created this to give a gift to somebody, and it was all images and messages of moments they've shared together. So so you can tell it's very. That's why I wrote multi-purpose, because we keep being surprised how people are using it. Yeah, and I don't know if we have time to do the mapping set.
I think unfortunately, we're running out of time. We have had a great question in from Marek, which is, I think it's a great question anyway, which is that what is the largest ecosystem you've ever mapped on 7 Vortex or seen mapped on 7 Vortex?
That's.
I might reframe that question as well. Has there been a particularly challenging ecosystem to map?
Yeah, I mean, there is one. So we were contracted not long ago to map all the nature-inspired innovations around the world.
So just say that again. You had to map anything that's nature inspired, Bama McCree designs, innovations. Map featuring all of them.
And I'm looking for it, but it's I don't know, it's hundreds of notes. Not find this one. So 861 notes by Mimicry Global Ecosystem Collective. I won't open it because I don't know if it will break. I don't think it will.
So large.
But yeah, 860 notes.
Actually fit on the diff. Wow.
Yeah. So kudos to Hugo, who has been doing that and mobilizing the whole biomemory community around the world.
And what just I don't know how well you're familiar with that map, but you know, what kind of insights come out of that type of work? Is that things like the types of animals that inspire most kinds of designs, or is that the types of organizations that, or designers who created the most, have designed the most nature-inspired designs? What kind of things do we learn from an exercise like that?
I think you recognize where the notes are.
Yeah.
So, for instance, we were having a conversation just before opening this map at some event, and somebody said, "Yeah, but in Sweden there's not so much going on," and it's the largest node. Well, almost the largest node on this map, which is probably related also to who has been involved in doing it. But you get those type of insights and you get the big picture. Yeah, type of organizations. There's still, and this is a challenge that we're, you know, dealing with and making sense out of. The value of the process today is still, I think it's still much larger than the value of only the outcome and looking at it, which I think it's okay. You know, there are a lot of things that it's the values in the process, but I think especially today in something like this, it's more the whole value of creating and getting people to think in these terms versus, oh, you see it and what now? But the good thing is that it's a very lightweight technology, and there's a lot of further analytics that we can do once we have all this data in place.
Well, we are out of time. I thought maybe one final question. Unfortunately, we didn't get to do the demonstration that we had lined up on it, but we did get to see the tool in action, which was great to understand a little bit more about how it works. What could someone who's watched this session do next to start playing with the platforms? Is it as simple as going to your website and creating a map and just starting to create those connections and having a play? Get any advice?
Well, it's all drag and drop. Some people really surprise us with how far they get without ever asking. But if somebody gets stuck, I mean, hopefully people get the idea of what can be done. Some people really get stuck with the first node because they don't recognize it drag and drop. But there are a lot of possibilities. Go to 7vortex.com, log in, email and password, start mapping. And if you have questions, you can shoot us an email and we'll try to help.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Jose, or indeed this morning, this evening, depending on where you're watching this session from. We are on the third week of the diff, but thank you to our audience for watching and for those questions that came in. But we are on the third week of the diff, so that means there's still loads of time left for you to watch more sessions. We have about 9 live sessions every single day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But before we get to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, at 5 o'clock GMT today, we have William McDonough, one of the pioneers of the cradle-to-cradle design concept, certainly someone whose thinking was inspired by looking at how nature works, and certainly someone who thinks in a ecosystems, interconnected way. So watch his session. He's being interviewed by our very own Joe Murphy at 5 o'clock GMT, which is in about an hour and a half's time. That's on at thinkdiff.co. Don't forget that there's a huge range of 150 total sessions that have either been or are coming up on the schedule. So please keep tuning in. Please keep asking your questions. Thanks again to Jose for today's event, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon at the diff.